Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Griffin, and I am the Executive Director of Associated Chamber Music Players, also known as ACMP. I want to welcome all of you today to our seminar on how to hold a play-in. And I especially want to thank our 6 panelists and introduce them and give them a moment to talk about themselves and their relationship to play-ins and ACMP. So our panelists today we have 2 board members. So we have Peter Opperly, who is the chair of ACMP Foundation, but he's also chair of the Membership and Engagement Committee, which is sort of producing this event. And Susan Alexander, who is the chair of our grants committee. And it was her idea to have these info sessions so that we can share more ideas across, between, people in ACMP, on the board and the general membership on best practices on how to basically do things that serve amateur chamber music interests. We also have with us Michael Knoch, all the way from Berlin, Germany. And he is our German ambassador on the International Ambassadors Council. And we have 3 members of our North American Outreach Council. We have 2 from the West Coast. We have Phyllis, Kaiden in Seattle and Virginia Feldman in Portland, Oregon, and Bob Myers from Washington, DC. So I would like to just start by letting you each I've introduced you, of course, but now I'd like to hear you say something about yourself and what you play and where you're from and some of your experience running play-ins. So Peter, would you like to start?
Sure. I play violin. I live in Westchester County, which is just above New York City. And I ran a play-in last spring with about a little over 30 people. And it was my first experience of running a play-in, and it was a great learning experience and a fun experience for everyone involved. And I really look forward to today's Zoom meeting. And I'm so happy to see that we have some 25 or so folks in attendance, and I'm looking forward to a really robust discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so Susan, since you're our grants chair, would you like to say something about yourself?
Hello, I'm Susan. I play the piano. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm the secretary of the board. And I think play-ins are one of the very best things that we give money out to. And so the more people who know how to do a good one, the better off ACMP is and in our membership, because it's a great way for people to meet people that they might go on to play with for many years. And my experience of organizing play-ins was last year, Stephanie and I did a jam kazam, all online play-in, which is kind of interesting. And yeah, if there's time later, I can talk about that. Okay.
Good. So I would say ladies first and violists first. So Phyllis, we have Phyllis here in Seattle.
Yes, hi. I am actually broadcasting from the Seattle Aquarium where I was volunteering this morning. So if you hear extra noise in the background, there's nothing I can do about it. I play viola. I live on Vashon Island, which is a ferry ride from Seattle. That makes organizing a play-in kind of challenging for me because I don't live in Seattle. I don't know a lot of the venues in Seattle. So I have had to rely on a network of people to help me get things going. And as Susan mentioned, people come to these play-ins. They're just so friendly and so happy to be there. And I've had many groups continue to play afterwards. So it's a very positive experience and well worth doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Phyllis. And now I'm Ginny and nearby, Virginia Feldman, also known as Ginny, yes, in Portland.
So I've been having the larger type play-ins, 35 to 45 people. Just finished our 19th one. Usually do 2 or 3 a year, except for COVID. And I'm play the violin, piano, and organ. And I'm looking forward to some wisdom about how I can lessen my headaches, because having 40 people play is a lot of work. very rewarding, as Phyllis said, because people love them, and we have people who've been coming to all 19. So looking forward to some different ideas. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And so we have Michael, our lone wind player here on the panel and our only representative in Europe.
Yes, hello everyone. Good evening, I could say. Here it's dark. I play the flute, and I have been organizing seminars or play-ins in Göttingen, that is 300 kilometers from here, middle of Germany, where about 20 to 30 chamber music players come together once a year for 4 days. And there we have to, I have to organize that everyone has something to play and nobody is left. So I have some experience in this. And since 3 years, 2 or 3 years, I organized here some play-ins in Berlin with about 15 to 20 members or chamber music players. The BKL is Berliner Kammermusikliste, Berlin Chamber Music List. I'm organizing since several years here in Berlin with about 250 members. Not all of them still exist, I think. In German, we call them those who do no more exist, but are still on the list, Karteileiche. I don't know if there's an English word for this. It's a corpse in a fire. So I think there are some Karteileichen, but I know of about 160 chamber music players who are still existing and are active here in Berlin so far.
Okay, so on to our other panelist and other organizer is Bob Myers from DCCM. So Bob, if you'd like to tell something about that as well, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I am Bob Myers, a pianist, chief cook and bottle washer of actually the DC Concert Orchestra Society, which runs 3 programs, one of which is called the DC Chamber Musicians, as well as the Classical Musicians of Metro DC. We count about 700 musicians as members of those 2 programs put together. We host 4 play-ins per year, generally accommodating 30 to 35 musicians. I'm in the throes of planning one right now that's coming up in 2 weeks. We might get some previews or tidbits of that. It's a joy to do. It's also got a lot of challenges involved in keeping everybody engaged and keeping everything playable. I'm just going to close my introduction by saying that one of the key phrases for our organization when it comes to these social chamber music playing events is that we keep it collegial, congenial, and non-competitive, because we musicians can be hard on ourselves.
Excellent, the 3 C's. So the first question I'd like to raise to all of our panelists who might want to weigh in on it is one of the first things, first of all, what a play-in is. So from the ACMP perspective, a play-in is a participatory event where people come and play chamber music for pleasure. And it's not a concert, but there can be friends that come that are just listeners. Often it's nice and people will bring their family or friends and they'll sit back and enjoy it. It's not a performance. It can be sight reading, can also involve some people who would prefer can practice ahead of time. And we'll get into that when we discuss choosing repertoire and stuff. It's basically, I like to see it as a big kind of chamber music party. And there's many, many types of chamber music parties. And I've chosen today's panelists because they have they've been doing it for a long time and have very different take on it. And today's topic is mainly going to be about big chamber music parties that are open to the public subject to RSVP, which is the type of play-in that's also eligible for a grant from ACMP. But so that leads me to the question of finding a suitable venue for a play-in. So if you're doing a small venue, is it your home? Do you have a home that can have a big play-in? I know some people do. I think I'd like to start with Phyllis, because you specifically mentioned finding venues for play-ins. Maybe if you can tell us some of the solutions you found, and what do you think what are the qualities of a suitable space? Like, what are the needs that you're looking to meet in a venue for a play-in?
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. So I think it depends on the size of a group you want to accommodate, because I find that the physical space really dictates the number of groups and number of people who can be accommodated. Whether the physical space has pianos or not may dictate the kinds of ensembles you can put together. So as I said, I don't actually live in Seattle, but most of the people would be coming from Seattle. So I looked for a venue in Seattle, and I looked at some schools, some churches, and we are fortunate to have a nonprofit here called Music Center of the Northwest. And they have an old church, and they have about 9 or 10 studios, and then a small auditorium with a stage. And they're a very busy venue, giving classes of all sorts during the week and in the evenings, but on Sunday mornings, their facility is generally available. So they have worked with me 3 times now, and they have parking. They have water fountains. They even have a little kitchen. They have tables for setting up registration. So for me, that has worked out ideally. There are enough studios that I can look at the studios, figure out how many musicians could fit in there, and then say, oh, that room will hold a trio, and this one over here could do a piano quartet. So I find that particular venue very helpful for us. If I couldn't use them, I would probably look for churches that have a lot of small rooms that maybe they use for their Sunday school and couldn't make available for a play-in. So that's how I've done it.
Excellent. So Ginny, you also do yours, always at the same place, right? In a church?
Right. Yeah, and I think the ideal thing that Phyllis mentioned is generally satisfied by most churches these days, which are, a lot of them are going belly up, or they're being very underutilized, so that you have a bigger choice rather than just Sunday morning. You can do a lot of different times, and they're generally less expensive. I happen to be using my own church, but I don't get necessarily a deal on it. I don't want to screw my own church in order to, but it is cost. We have 10 rooms, 3 plus pianos, varying sizes, and they're all pretty much soundproof. But as the numbers increase, we start playing in the halls, and that also works. So I think the expense is the main thing. Is how much do you have to charge your players, or how many grants do you need to get to be able to afford a bigger venue? We have good parking, which I think is another important thing. We looked into PSU, which is a university here, which has jillions of pianos, because I have to turn pianists away, unfortunately, because I only have 3. And the parking was terrible. It was expensive, and they only had a few days a year where you could maybe get in there. So I would suggest looking at all the going broke churches and asking what they would take for all their rooms.
No, thank you. So Peter, I was obviously at your play-in, and actually I'd like you to weigh in on venue as well, because Peter did something different. He used an actual music school. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you organized that?
Sure. Actually, it's a music conservatory, but to clarify for everybody, it's really more of a community music school, of which there are many all over the place. And so I worked with them to find a time. Luckily, they do not have anything going on one day of the weekend. And so basically we had full reign of the building, which had, I think, pianos in almost every room, which was very lucky. It had liberal parking lot outside. It was actually also just about a 10-minute max walk from the nearest railroad station for people coming up from New York City. So it worked out quite well. Their price was a little steeper than we kind of expected, but one of their board members actually made a donation to adjust that down. And so we were able to do it within the parameters of the ACMP grant that we got. So we were lucky with that. And they were invested in it kind of because they really, or very much so, because they're very eager to expand their adult chamber music program. So they had a vested interest in discounting our rate too. And so it was kind of a win-win that we sort of stumbled across.
Excellent. And Michael, what kind of venue, what kind of space do you generally use? Is it always the same, or do you do different places?
Well, the last 2 years we could make music in the school I was the school doctor of since the last, for the last 20 years. I'm glad to be retired since last summer, but I can use these rooms anymore as well now. Still, may I share my
Sure. Yes.
my screen? No, that's not right. This I want to show you. I think it's important that you have rooms that are acoustically independent. In the seminar venue where we come together for once a year, we take care that there is a room between those two rooms where music is made, so that there is no disturbance between the several music groups. Well, piano available, that's important. Maybe there's a double bass, that is fine for the double bass player who doesn't want to carry his own instrument. These other things were told already, and there's another. Chairs, good to sit on. Light is important. Music stands available. So these are the points I think are important.
Oh, thank you so
And
much.
at school we have the opportunity to use many classrooms. That's fine.
Mhm. And do you get it for a discount because you used to teach there, or do you get it for free, or do you, so how do you work that out?
It's a little discount I have to pay, but it's quite economous.
So I think the takeaway is we need to make friends with people that have space.
Yes.
Have schools and churches and
Good, yes.
colleges. So Bob, space is something that, because I know that you're always, that through DC Chamber Musicians and DC Chamber Orchestra, you're always looking for new relationships with spaces in the DC area. Do you want to tell us something about that? Oh, I think you're muted. Whoops.
Yes, indeed. And Susan Alexander and I recently had occasion to go around meeting with some other musical organizations, and that opened some opportunities, Community Music School in particular. I will say that I certainly completely agree with everything everybody else has said before. They raised some very valid points. We kind of backed into our current location because it accommodates our orchestra, which is quite large. It's the only place affordable that it will accommodate our orchestra. but it has the rent's reasonable. We can do 7 rooms, 2 with good pianos. We have to limit the pianos. We do get a chance to see a lot of churches for potential performance venues, and have taken them into consideration, but they tend to be, unfortunately, despite Jenny's very valid observation that many churches are having financial troubles, and we'll discount not seeing that in churches in the Metro DC area, and we're getting our space in our current location for a good price. We don't have parking, but we are centrally located by Metro stops serving the entire metropolitan area. That's public transportation is always important as well.
Bob, could you tell us what you consider a good price? What should we be looking for a 30 to 40 member play-in?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm paying. I don't know whether that's a good price or not. I pay $300 for a 4-hour afternoon, 5-hour afternoon.
That's good. It's decent.
That's-
Susan has a solution that doesn't cost anything. So Susan has run a number of play-ins in a virtual context on Jam Kazam. So for those of you that were during the pandemic following all of our efforts to get people playing online. In fact, Susan gave a seminar on how to use Jam Kazam. So Susan, do you want to weigh in a little bit about maybe what you can help us also foray into the next topic, which is finding musicians, because obviously on Jam Kazam you don't have to find space, but there are considerations. So if you can maybe let us know what the considerations you need people to have available in order to use Jam Kazam, and then also the mechanism you use to find players.
Yeah. So, you know, during the pandemic, everyone was really desperate to play, and they were willing to do extraordinary things to continue playing. And so, you know, some people were willing to actually learn new technology in order to be able to play. And there were, at the height of things, there were quite a lot of people who were doing it. I think now that people are playing together in person again, there's not as much interest in it, but I still think that we should continue to keep this online community going, because it is a way for people to play together who would normally not get to do it. And last year we did this very, very neat all Mozart play-in, where we just asked the community of people, and at that time there was a directory that I was maintaining, which we no longer need now, but it's very easy on ACMP to indicate what online services you're proficient at. And so we advertised to these different places and let people know. And all you had to do was say that you were interested in what your instrument was. And then Stephanie and I put together a bunch of different ensembles because Mozart wrote so many different pieces for so many different instruments. And we were actually able to keep everyone gainfully employed for at least 2 sessions during the afternoon. And then at the end, we all enjoyed singing some of Mozart's dirty canons, which was a lot of fun. So I think I do think this is a good thing to do. I also think is an idea that Bob and I once talked about that we never pursued, which was also the idea of using multiple houses, you know, having people be host at their house, lots of people doing it at the same time. So it was kind of like a movable feast, although you didn't have to go from house to house, but we could arrange that people who wanted to do it would go to the house of the person who could accommodate the kind of group that they wanted to play in. And you know, the thing that's not good about that is that there's no opportunity for everyone to get together at the end and talk to each other. But I don't know how much that actually happens at play-ins anyway. So these are 2 basically no cost ways of having play-ins that you know, I think we should continue to think about just to spread it around. Okay, how do you find people? So you know, the ACMP directory is a good way to find people in a certain location. And we have the ability now to search very specifically for people within a certain area. And so that's helpful. We have a way to put an advertisement in our events page to tell people that something is happening. And these are both nice services that we can offer. But I mean, this is what ACMP can do. But I know that everyone else has many creative ways of advertising their plans, and so I would like to turn it over to them.
Here, you have your hand raised. You have a comment. Yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Susan mentioned. Reminded me that I went several times to a terrific play-in that was held in the suburbs of Philadelphia along the quote main line, where there's a lot of towns connected. And basically what they did, a la what you were referring to, Susan, is folks in a neighborhood, several of which had pianos or different things, basically had a progressive dinner. So it was sort of a potluck, moving from house to house, and playing to playing. So everyone kind of started in one house, I think, and then you sort of kind of mixed and matched and worked your way around. And you did eventually end up at one house at the very end of it. And it was a really just wonderful way to do the play-in, and actually, apropos of the current topic, free of any charges for the venue, and just a fun way to socialize with people too.
Actually, we have another member of our NAOC, Edward Bridge, in Louisville, Kentucky. In fact, I should have asked Edward to weigh in as well. He does a unique play-in every year through his condominium. He gets people to allow him to use their apartments. And I think I'll have to ask him and fact check this. I think he even has people that are not playing let people use their apartments.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that, but it's all in the same building. It's kind of like trick-or-treating on Halloween. Susan and I were both at a play-in recently. I organized a small play-in with a friend who's an ACMP member as well. Her name is Mary Cherney. She's a flutist in Upper Manhattan. We did it in her apartment, which is basically a 2-bedroom apartment. And we broke all the rules, no sound isolation or anything. And I thought we were going to have music in 2 rooms, but when we started, people were so itching to play that a string trio ended up in her roommate's bedroom. So we had 3 rooms going the whole time, and it was a lot of fun. And once we were playing, we didn't tend to hear the other groups play.
Right.
The only thing I must say is I asked everyone to bring a stand. People always forget to bring stands, so you need to bring extra stands, because if everyone's going to be playing in multiple rooms that you didn't plan on, you are going to be stuck in some difficult situations. Ginny, you have raised a hand, I see.
Yeah, just in terms of how to get players, I think the longer you're having play-ins, it gets the point of restricting the number of players that you can have, which is always harsh to turn people down, but you can only, even with 10 rooms, you can only handle so many. So I have a list of 300 people. It's not a formal list like Bob has a membership. And I used to send an announcement to all 300, but I could not handle all the people who wanted to come. So, I get far more responses there than from the ACMP, actually. So I don't know why maybe others panelists can speak to how the ACMP listing gets them players, because I have not been so successful there, unfortunately, and maybe I'm posting it wrong, or I don't know.
So that's a good point. So Phyllis, I see you have a hand raised as well.
Yeah, I'll just tell you what I've done to find people. So I start with the ACMP directory and I send email that way. I also ask the venue, Music Center of the Northwest, to include an announcement in their newsletter. And I have various lists of players from workshops I've attended over the years, and I tend to use that and my personal list. And then I also use local orchestras and other kinds of organizations that promote chamber music, asking them to include something either in their newsletter or have a handout at their rehearsal. So that's what I do.
Oh, excellent. Bob? Ups, you're muted, I think.
Yep, I'm sorry. I seem to be technologically impaired with Zoom. I can't find the raise hand button here. Okay, so yes, like Ginny, I get so many responses that it gets to be painful to turn down people, and it's gotten to the point where I don't limit my advertising, but I do take long waiting lists, and I tend to make the invitation page. We have a registration page that we manage through which people sign up, and on it is prominently, with all due respect, especially Michael, to the wonderful flutists in the world, if I didn't manage who RSVP'd, we would be having flute choirs for 35 flutists every play-in. So as the responses come in, I kind of manage the mix of instruments so that I'm not overloaded with any particular instrument, and it helps create balance in figuring out the ensembles later. But my primary audience is my membership, but then I also post the event to the ACMP event website and the ACMP Facebook page. And we have a Facebook page, and I do some paid advertising out there because we do like to welcome new musicians, because that's part of our mission, is to re-engage lapsed musicians or former musicians back into the music world.
Excellent. Actually, I was just thinking when you're talking about finding musicians, a couple of you mentioned having to turn pianists away because you don't have enough pianos, or in your case, you have to limit how many flutists come. Do any of our panelists here have a perspective on? Oh, Susan, seems like you have an answer. Susan's a pianist, so she's passionate about this topic. Oops, I think, are you on mute? You're muted, Susan.
No, actually, I wanted to, it's not about this. I just wanted to say something about what Bob said, just that, to say that if people want to do paid advertising, that would be the kind of, we would support that. If you are applying for a grant, that, that would be a thing that we could help with, So just wanted to mention that. But sorry, go back to talking about pianists. I was very interested.
Well, Flutist is going to defend his instrument. Michael, how do you handle that?
Yes, I'm always keen on bass instrument players, cellos, and bass instruments. For every ensemble, you need a bass instrument. And the other point is, I show what I wrote down. I always mention, again, it should be noted that a certain ability to play new or unknown pieces of medium difficulty prima vista is an advantage. Since I noticed this, all the players could play quite well prima vista. That is fine for all of them, of us.
Okay, good. So actually, Susan, when we were putting our whole Mozart Jam Kazam play-in together, I think Susan and I might have spent 7 hours on the phone. I can't remember. It was a couple sessions, but it was a very long and tricky procedure. But one thing that we ended up doing was not being purists about exact instrumentation. So I don't know if you want to speak about some of the decisions that we made in that regard.
Very good point.
That is true. We did do things where you had instruments that were at least played in the same key, that we let them trade off for each other. I think like having flute play the violin part, or that's a way to deal with all the flutes. It's to play the violin parts, things like that. Actually, and online, one of the cool things about the internet is that people have created strange arrangements of all kinds of things. And how we found a crazy production of some larger Mozart piece for a very interesting ensemble. So yeah, I would say it's really good to be creative and look to some of these things that people have just put together and see if you can use them in the plan.
Excellent. So Ginny, I see you just raised your hand.
Yeah, I think that I always prepare my players for that they're going to have in my advertisement that they're going to have a better experience if they can sight read well. A couple people have come when they thought they could sight read and they had miserable experiences. So I don't exclude them per se. I say, if you want to try it out, try it out. They sometimes leave after the first session, which is a disaster. So I usually talk to them in person if they're new and I don't know their ACMP rating, which of course some people up their real rating and some people down. So it's hard to match groups. But some players are really against having a flute take a violin part. But if you're going to have mixed groups, you just absolutely have to. I have one bassoonist who loves being a cellist, and he takes a breath every once in a while, you know. So I think that allows a lot more collegiality between winds and strings. The great difficulty is, of course, if you have someone not show up, and then you have this flute hanging around with, you know, nothing to do. So I think mixing winds and strings is extremely difficult, and I've just decided not to do it this coming up session because it was just impossible with COVID illness. So I think that's how I manage trying to allow people to come in on their own cognizance and sometimes discover for themselves that it's not for them. And I do have a decent digital piano, so I can pianist who can face a digital piano rather than not playing at all. So I can sometimes expand that to 4 to allow another pianist in. And there is a huge repertoire of, like, if I have 8 cellists, there's a repertoire for 4 cellos. And you just have to get it from your local library, or, you know, download it, or ask the cellists themselves to bring it. So that I try to kind of match. Last time I started out with like 15 violists. Can you imagine, Stephanie, 15 violists and only 8 violinists? But, you know, there's a lot of chamber music for lots of violists. So anyways, I try to be flexible in that regard, but I have to know the repertoire. I have to have a good handle on how to search IMSLP for, you know, music for 3 violists and 6 violins. So it gets complex. If you want an easy one, balance your program before the people come in. I think that's the way to make sure that you're not going to be tearing your hair out the week before.
Wow. So that's very, very good points, Ginny. So Phyllis, I see you have a comment.
Yeah, so I have had sometimes when the groups are oversubscribed, there are just too many people. And if the room can accommodate it, I will ask the group members if someone can double on a part. So we have allowed doubling in our play-ins, and that has been fine. We have also had mixed string and winds. There's a spore nonette that you can do, and a few other things, but it is very difficult to arrange. And I find it particularly difficult to get bass players. And I have had the experience of having to turn away a trumpet player because I could not find any music that worked with. And so if anyone has any suggestions on that, I'd love to hear it. But there do seem to be some limitations. I don't know that I could accommodate trumpets and tubas and trombone, brass section.
Well, actually, that's a very good segue into what I think is probably the primary topic of today's session, is the combination of finding and obtaining the right repertoire and matching up people with repertoire and with each other, coming up with groups, because this is, in my experience too, of organizing kind of play-in type events, this is the big challenge of it. Ginny, you said something very interesting about, or was it you, Phyllis? One of you just said something about choosing the repertoire first. So I think I'd like to open it up, all of our panelists to weigh in on this, because there's 2 philosophies. One philosophy is this is the chicken or the egg, which comes first? You choose the repertoire, you have some sort of sign up mechanism, people choose which pieces they're going to play, and you have it all worked out. Or do you do a general call out to your community and get as many players interested as possible, get them to sign up, and then do what Susan and I did and spend 7 hours on the phone, being creative and figuring things out. And there's value in each of these, and there might be some of you that do a hybrid of this as well. So Bob, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to start talking about what you do?
Sure. I'd also just like to echo things that Phyllis and Jenny said, that some musicians are purists and don't like instrumental substitutions. And I've found some musicians don't like doubling. So if I have to do that, I like to, try to give people suggestions in advance. I mean, the information in advance and give them the choice, although that does complicate life, planning life. How I select repertoire, is that the question?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, not just that, it's a combination. So repertoire first, and then the people, or do you have people sign up first and then choose the repertoire? How do you go about it?
Okay, so actually, I have people sign up first. Then I ask people for suggestions, which becomes usually, to the extent I can use it, a foundation upon which to build. It's particularly helpful to get their suggestions, because then I know at least the person who suggested it, probably it's in their wheelhouse in terms of skill set. It's not overreaching or underreaching. So I don't have to worry about matching them to repertoire based on the difficulty level. And yes, Jenny, the self-rating has a wide latitude in the way people have rated themselves. Fortunately, I've only had 1 or 2 people leave early, but one was in tears. Yeah, so you gotta be forgiving on the difficulty level in terms of what you select, and that's hard for a pianist to evaluate in terms of the strings and the wind players, but get some help on that if you can. I then use the suggestions to the extent I can. They're usually some pretty good suggestions, and they are sometimes some very creative suggestions that are well off the beaten path, which is always fun to introduce people to new niches of the public domain music. Trumpets, yeah, I've had the same problem, Phyllis. You're not going to find a lot of trumpet in chamber music, except copyrighted new music that usually is outside of reach, unless somebody brings it in hard copy. Then I just go with mapping people to the requests, see what kind of instruments I got left over, identify the ensembles that will work, whether it's a wind trio, wind quartet, string sextet, string quartet, piano quartet, that sort of thing, and just start identifying the type of ensembles that we can support. And then I do searches on IMSLIP, IMSLP, to find repertoire suitable for those ensemble types. And I will do instrument substitutions, flutes in particular for violins, at the very end if I have some people loose, but I try to maximize everyone's engagement and try, I can't help but have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people who are loose one of our 3 sessions for the day, but I try to keep everybody as engaged as possible.
So actually, I would like to weigh in on this. If you're ever in trouble, Georg Philipp Telemann has written for everything. If you look up the works list on IMSL,
you are right.
thousands of people of organizing an ACMP Telemann playing at some point in the street. There's trumpets, there's horns, there's oboes. I've stuff involving oboes, multiple things. So there's, looking into the early music repertoire is a really great solution for that. And I also know that some play-ins, so it seems like, Bob, your type of play-in, you organize people in rooms and you set it up in advance. So before you come, you know which rooms you're going in and you know who you're playing with, and you have the advantage of knowing whether or not you have time or whether you want to practice or just sight read. So that's one model. Some play-ins, I think, are, I don't know if any of you organize play-ins like this, so I thought I'd bring up this model as well. Some play-ins are people play en masse. Like I co-organized one last year for an ACMP event with Arlene Hadjinian, who is a very active pianist and violist here in the New York area. And it was a Brandenburg play-in, which is a very popular thing to do, which Helen Rice, our founder, was famous for her Brandenburg parties. But the way that Arlene and I organized this, it was basically multiples on a part for the strings. So what she did is she created a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet. She populated the solo positions herself based on people she knew, and she uses the ACMP directory. And she's played with a lot of people, so she knows their level. She populated those spots, filled it in, and then basically let people fill in their own slots. And if you're a string player, you can just play all night if you want. So that's kind of how she did it. Peter, I'd like to actually ask you, because Peter did an interesting thing during his play-in. I would call your play-in that you did last year a potluck. But he did organize an activity at the end for the string players. We did an en masse Mendelssohn octet. So at the end, the string players could all do that, but because there were multiple rooms, some string players could be in other rooms playing with other people while that was going on. So I don't know, Peter, would you like to describe how you approach that?
Right. So this being my first play-in that I organized, perhaps I was a little naive, but it did kind of work out. I think partly because I used a roster of folks, and I think I mentioned previously, it was about a little over 30 folks that pretty much all sort of knew each other or knew someone who knew someone, etc. So I kind of put the list out there of about 40, 45 people, got the 30 folks that committed, and then with their permissions, sent that list out and said, folks, match yourselves up in advance and pick some pieces and come, as a group and play your pieces together. You don't have to do that. Certainly, if you want to, feel free to come. And I was not playing all day. So I was there at the front desk to connect people. And we had about 3, I think, like hour and a half-ish or so sessions. And then I, mixed and matched people when they came to the desk and said, well, I'm kind of without somebody. But it did seem to work out well.
Yeah, I thought it worked well too. And I learned one lesson from that because I came with a suitcase full of some music as well. The one thing I learned from that, which is interesting, I think if you're going to do a potluck, and it kind of happened the other day at our party at my friend Mary's place as well, I think it's very useful that the organizer has a lot of duets and trios in their bag. Because what happened to us, remember the first session, we had one violist floating around. And I have a whole lot of viola duos here. I wasn't playing either, but if I had had viola duos with me, we could have just gone into a room and played some, viola duets. So I think that's a key ingredient that either you have your participants bring, or as an organizer, if you just have that, and if you think about your different types of instruments that show up, have a bunch of duets that could accommodate a wide range of them. My experience is that you never have enough violins because you need 2 for most groups, and you're always going to have way too many violas. So it's like viola duos, wind duos. I remember, Peter, you very specifically asked people who played piano or winds to make sure they brought pieces, including their instrument, because the strings are going to show up with quintets and quartets, and strings have this kind of advantage that the rest of us don't have. So anyway, so Ginny, I see that you would like to weigh in on the potluck approach.
Well, I tried the potluck approach once, and it really didn't work at all because people gravitated towards the people that they knew, which left all the new players with a terrible experience because they ended up playing the one piece that was written for 1 violin, 3 violas, and 2 cellos. I mean, so you have to have a vast repertoire I actually have a huge repertoire of string trios when the violinist doesn't show up, so that I tend to have a lot of background stuff. But so the potluck did not work for me, and maybe that was because we have so many people who've been playing for a long time. But every time we have 5 or 10 new people, who you want to have the best experience rather than the worst. So that's why I'm going to screen share if I can. So I don't know, are you seeing this? So this is what I do for each room and each session, so that, and some of them are predetermined because that's the music I have, or that's what someone requested, or it's the only piece written for that particular groupings, which is why I'm not doing clarinets, because if your clarinet doesn't show up, no one reads in that clef, so you're a goner. So this takes an immense amount of work beforehand, but it allows me to know that everyone is going to be playing, both the new folks and the old folks. So I'll stop sharing there.
Oh, hi, Jerry.
And everyone has a great experience, particularly of new music that they've never played, are stretched and enjoy the stretching. Some people are overstretched and don't, but you can't please everybody. I think the thing you want to do is try to please as many people as possible, and let them know in advance that, every once in a while someone has to double because someone doesn't show up. So show up. I mean, that's the other thing, is how do you get people to, they commit and then they say, oh, I forgot I had to do this. And, there goes your stack of cards. So there's certainly a lot of merit in the potluck approach, but I couldn't get it to work. Wish I could.
Actually, this, I see Bob has his hand up. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, Jenny and I have exceedingly similar experiences and approaches. I will spare you my chart that is almost exactly the same type of thing as hers. I try to move people around amongst ensembles so that it exposes people to the new, everybody gets to know each other as much as possible. So it's a round robin. We do short socials for 30 minutes, not with refreshments. Never tried a potluck. I'm not sure I'd want to try to do that. That sounds too complicated for me. But yeah, there's that habit of the people who know each other always gravitate. So if you're going to go that approach, of course, we're talking large gatherings here. For the smaller folks, it could be substantial. Smaller groupings, it could be substantially different. You need to have somebody who sort of greases the wheels and goes out and introduces, sort of gets the conversation going.
Excellent. So actually, this would be a good opportunity, I think, for Michael to show us. So Michael has some elaborate charts. And you also mentioned your idea of this play-in card game. I would love to know exactly how that works, because I think if you could show us some of yours and explain that. And also, Ginny, I think you said you have a dance card approach as well. So Michael, do you want to share with us how, actually, especially since you're a wind player, I think it's very interesting to have you here, defending the rights of wind players at play-ins.
Yeah. Of course, it's more difficult to have combinations from wind players and string players. If you are only string players, it's quite easy, I think. And with these other instruments, it's, well, I give my screen. Can you see my cards?
Yes.
Yes. I made 3 sets of cards with several colors. Each instrument is a color. Flute is yellow, the oboe is light orange, the clarinet is dark orange, the horn is green, the bassoon is brown, and so on. And well, for every player I have a card, and then I mix these cards up as long as every player is in a group, in an ensemble. At the bottom, you see all the cards of the 15 players we were at last Saturday, and above this that's a second set mixed now in 3 groups. The left one is a wind quintet. Right of that is a string quintet, and above all of them is a piano quintet. So these instruments were it was an easy way to combine 3 quintets. And for the next session, I mixed it up a little bit so that there was a quintet with 4 wind players and the pianist. I played Mozart 452. I was left as a flutist, and I combined myself with 3 string players, so we could play Mozart flute quartet, and the others played I don't remember quite well, for 2 of them had to leave. So these cards are the possibility to see where every player is, in which group he is, and is there someone left or not. And I mix it up as long as necessary so that everyone gets his place.
So how do you?
Would you understand that?
I understand it now. So with those cards, how do you handle the repertoire issue? So you now have a cards per instrument, so you can make.
I have cards for instruments and players, yes, and the repertoire. Well, we do it this way that everyone declares in advance which piece he wants to play, and I list these pieces up, and I'm looking, well, which pieces could be made, which instruments are necessary, and which piece is very intensively wished. So those should be made. And as we have several sessions, I try to get it this way that everyone at least gets one chance to play with a group one of these pieces he is very fond of.
Okay.
And the other players, well, are to play together with those who are the piece bringers.
Mhm.
That's the way.
You, at the end of your play-in, do you ever have a large group all playing together? Or is it always just in different small groups and then some social time in between?
We start with our overture with all together. I try to find a piece where all can play together. We had Bach piano concerto, and what was the other one? I don't know. This time we tried a Knoch, for we had this wind quintet, and the strings were doubled. Unfortunately, it was a cacophonium music I chose. I didn't know it. So it was fun to play together, but it was not fun to make this music. That's the piece. We had Reinberger in the Hinterhand. We could have played Reinberger, but the time was over, so we divided up into the ensembles to play our quintets.
Okay, good. I see Peter has raised his hand. He is now on a cell phone.
So I just thought I'd add in specific to that question, as since you were there, you probably remember, Stephanie. as much as I'm kind of sort of opposed to doubling on parts, we did end the playing that we had with a really fun reading of the Mendelssohn Octet, which was a total blast. Basically, everybody joined in. We did have a very large room. It was more like a concert hall. And it was just a really nice way to sort of wrap up the day. And it's something that we had bookmarked in advance for everybody. So there was refreshment time before. Everybody had a chance to sort of debrief and connect a little bit with new folks from the entire day, and then everyone played through the Mendelssohn.
Mhm. Excellent.
If you've got a good first violinist.
or two or three of them.
Actually, that's a question I have. So when you have, because Ginny, you mentioned people that come that are not the greatest sight readers. But in the spirit of inclusivity, which is a very important part, I remember Bob was talking about congenial, non-competitive, I forgot the other C, watch the video. But it is doubling, for example, a very good way to potentially give an opportunity for someone to play that's not the greatest sight reader. Like they could be sitting next to someone playing the same part that can kind of help them follow along.
Yes,
Or-
that's the only time I deliberately double, and I do it with the player's permission, who say, I've never done this before, I'm not really sure. So I said, we'll play alongside of John, who's really good. And or I assign them to the last, the fourth violin part in the Mendelssohn or something where the thing's not gonna, in an octet, if you miss one part, it may not be so bad as in a trio or a quartet where they're totally lost. So if I don't know a player, and I suspect maybe they're not so good. But I had a question of Michael. I didn't understand who actually makes the group. Do you make the group so that you have the repertoire that they play? Or what if does the group make the decision that they're going to have, I'd like to play with 2 flutes and 7 violins, but there's no music for it?
Yeah, you have to divide up these musicians to 2 flutes and 7 violins. That's not possible, of course. I make the groups considering as many pieces as possible that were brought by the musicians.
Mhm.
And I have to choose as long as necessary to group these musicians to that point that it fits.
So Ginny, this might be a good moment to screen share your dance card. And so we've seen Michael's card game. You've created a dance card. If you would like to show that to us and sort of walk us through it, and also when I saw it myself, I was curious if you populate the dance card for each participant, or if they do it, or if they sign up on each other's dance cards.
Let me see, did I get out of here? I have to screen share. Well, I make it, it's not like Michael's where they come with, they should have it all. Where is it?
Oh, so it's like Bob's, where they already know who they're playing with?
Yes, yeah. So it's just, it tells them where to go, who they're playing, what they're playing.
Oh, I
And
see.
yeah, if something falls through, then they have a chance of possibly finding somebody else. But it's just a mechanism of communicating to them where they're supposed to be at any one session.
Okay, so it's just to orient them.
Yeah.
Susan's applauding that. Or was that a hand raised? I think it was a hand raised. Okay, Susan would like to comment.
I'm sorry. Well, this dance card thing made me think about the Bennington Chamber Music Conference. I don't know if any of you have been to it. Now they're at Colgate, but if you're if you're organizing a thing where the groups aren't or all decided in advance, there are a couple of things that they do there because like free play is a very big part of the agenda there, to try to ensure that everyone ends up getting to play in groups. And so these things might actually be useful for play-ins. One of them is new people have a special color. So they do use like name tags. So new people have a special color, and it's and there'll be moments when everyone tries to get a new person into their group. So that might be something that could be used at a certain for a certain part of the plan, is make sure that you have at least one person in your group that you do not know. Another thing they do is for experienced people, those people can draw a name of someone who's not experienced, and then it's their responsibility to put a group together that includes this new person who doesn't know anyone. And then they also have a kind of a dance card thing. Everyone gets a card kind of at the beginning of the week with the times that might be available for doing sight reading. And then as they have people to play with, they can fill in their card as they go along. So, that's over an entire week. For just an afternoon, there won't be as many possibilities. I will also say that they have a very big library of chamber music. So if a group gets put together, that's like a reasonable instrumentation, there's a good chance that there will be some music. And then people also bring music with them that they're interested in playing, and they look for people to do it. So just a lot of kind of cool ideas. I think they've been doing this for very many years and have thought about these issues of trying to integrate new people into communities where a lot of people do know each other, and trying to create some mechanisms to ensure that the new people get included in things. And I will just say one more thing, which is I went to a kind of mix and match, chamber music mix and match thing one year, where it was sponsored by the Capital City Symphony. And they did have a potluck dinner as part of it. And they had a big pile of music. And yes, like all the string players went off to play Brandenburgs together, and it's very annoying for me as a pianist. But a clarinetist and a cellist came up to me and asked if I would play the Brahms clarinet trio with me, and then I played with them for the next 5 years. So, that can work too. There are just a lot of different ways of doing it that can work.
I just saw an interesting comment from Mark. Mark, do you want to actually unmute? And I'm just going to spotlight you for a sec. Mark mentioned something about the George. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, hi. Peter Hildebrandt, whom I think was on one of the boards of ACMP at one point, has held for a number of years a weekend, usually held at a college campus, a weekend of chamber music players. He restricts the numbers based upon trying to make sure he has enough but not too many of each instrument. It's primarily but not exclusively strings and winds. I mean, we've had a theremin and so on, but there are no organized groups. Peter has this huge library, plus he sets up a couple of printers with computers, so you can go and download something from IMSLP, and you change every hour, and you literally have a dance card, and you have to find the people to play with. And if you have no one, you just go to the central area, and someone comes in and says, I'm looking for a violist, I'm looking for a flute, and you pick your music. There are, in a sense, prearranged pieces. If someone wants to do a no-net, they'll put up on the board that I want to do a no-net at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and puts the various parts there, and you sign up. And even for, I mean, I went for the first time about 5 years ago, and even for a newbie, I found it not difficult to find people to play with and play as many hours a day as I was capable of. But it is a totally, it's sort of organized chaos, but it is totally free. I mean, I came there, you know, wanting to do to play something with people that I knew, and I brought music with me. And so again, it was, but it was something that I put up on the board, and, you know, I wanted to play a clarinet quintet with a friend. So I brought the music and put it up on the board, but you know, I had to find another violin and a viola and a cello, a cellist to do it. But this is a fun weekend, and one can play endlessly and play a lot of new music, and doubling, you know, doubling is allowed. I mean, it really depends upon whether the, you know, whether the people you're playing with have any problem with that. But you end up playing a lot of music that I can't play at home because I can't find a clarinetist, I can't find a flautist, or whatever. I do play on Jamulus, but it's a way of playing music that I can't play because I can, you know, I only have access to a string quartet and a string trio.
That's excellent. That's great feedback. I've heard great things about that weekend. So I'll have to ask Peter more about his mechanisms. I see hands raised by Ginny and Bob. And by the way, at this point too, if anyone has any questions about this topic and wants to raise your hand, it would be a good moment. We can open up the discussion a little bit about, because this is the meat about how to do a play-in, you know, how to organize it, how to figure out how people are engaged throughout it, how to find music. So feel free to raise your hand and I will bring you in. So Bob, would you like to weigh in on that?
Well, first I wanted to piggyback on Susan's observation of how she met her trio, to which I am very thankful, because that wonderful trio that she performed in also appeared at a couple of our public concerts, some of our early public concerts. And they are sorely missed. No, certainly Susan's still around, but Kwame and John are missed. So I also wanted to pick up off of Ginny and the dance card, because I do a dance card too. And I think the kind of environment that Mark just described is great for the musicians who know what they're going into, what they're facing. I have a lot of first timers, and I can speak personally, despite being in this forum, I'm a pretty deep introvert, and I think a lot of musicians are deep introverts, and coming in cold and just trying to figure out what you're going to play and with whom can be quite intimidating. And so I find the pre-assignment of music and the dance card, people want to be told what's due and where to go. That doesn't sound pleasant or kind, but in this sort of thing, many of these people need or want to be told what to play and where to go. And the dance card really moves things along. I think it all depends on what audience and what your mix of musicians is, your skill levels, how frequently they've participated. But if you're welcoming newcomers who are less skilled players, I think the more structure you can provide, perhaps, is the better.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Ginny?
Yeah, I participated in weekends, actually, Peter Hildebrand's old friend of mine, both here in Oregon, and I think the time pressure of an afternoon play-in is so different than a weekend that I'm not sure that the techniques transfer. So I think the thing that Mark described worked wonderfully at Manuka, which is what I used to go to, but not so good in a short time where you don't have a lot of time to get together. You don't have half an hour to look at the bulletin board to see that tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, yeah, you're free and you'll not be too tired. So I think they're different. I think they're different techniques, but I think Susan's comments about, how to do it have been very valuable for, I think, what would work for me in an afternoon. And I wish I could go to those weekends.
It looks like we have a comment from, or a question from Elena. Elena, hello.
Hi, I'm Alina in Dallas, and I'm trying to organize a chamber ensemble here. I put the RSVPs on Meetup, and I have two questions. One, you guys referenced a IMSIP or something like that for sheet music.
Yes.
And the other question is, on the Google Doc for assigning instruments and players to pieces, or is it just the rows will be like the players' names, and then the columns will be the sections for different pieces and their name and their instrument?
I would love to call on Phyllis for this one, because I saw Phyllis's handiwork when she organized a jam play in the Seattle area. Phyllis, would this be a good time to show us your spreadsheets and also your Sign Up Genius approach?
Sure. I have used Google Docs for registration, but then I found Sign Up Genius worked just as well and was a little less confusing for people, but I'm happy to share what I do. Let me just share. And I think someone posted to the chat imslp.org to answer that question about where to get music. So let me just share my screen. And let me go to, here we go. So I use this website called Sign Up Genius, and I have people come in and register, and then I have 2 sessions per day. It's actually one morning, 2 sessions of an hour and a half each. And for each session, they come to a sheet like this that shows that I look at what spaces are available and I say, oh, a piano quartet could fit in there. And then I put down the instruments for a piano quartet, and then people come along and sign up. And so I do this for each studio. Sometimes I don't know if it's going to be a string quartet or a flute quartet, and I just leave it a little bit open, but people come in and sign up. Same thing for session 2. There's a sign up sheet here, and I can set up Sign Up Genius so that people can only sign up for 1 slot per session, so there's no duplication. And then I produce a directory of emails of all the people who have signed up, and I share it with all the people as early as I can, and they just start email threads and decide what they want to play.
Oh, nice.
And they decide.
Thank you.
What do you do if nothing is filled? Do you just change it to a different piece?
Well, I haven't set the piece. I've just set the room. I just set the room. And then the people who sign up for the room decide what piece they want to do. If they're having trouble, oh, they need a cellist and they don't have one, and then I'll try and fill that slot for them with a cellist. And sometimes people sign up, say, for a piano quintet, and the group decides they want to do the Dvorak, and someone says, oh, I looked at that music, it's so hard, I can't do that. I will swap people around, and I usually just ask people if it's okay. Would you swap with so-and-so? And that seems to work out. So it's a bit of the potluck. It's a lot of self-organization. There's only one of me, there's 40 of them. People can self-organize.
I like that approach a lot. I also noticed that you created the slot for violin double or viola double. So basically people can choose, you know, if the rooms are full, but they want to play, they can choose to be the doubler or not. And if then I guess if there's people that don't like doubling, then they don't sign up for that. So that's a nice approach to that. Very, very nice. Does that answer your question, Alina? Or
Yes, definitely.
oh, cool.
Yeah,
I'm seeing a question from Corey. I don't see where I saw it in the chat. I don't know where Corey is. Are you there, Corey? Where's Corey?
I am here. I don't know how to show you that.
Yeah, we see you.
I'm
Okay.
there. Good. Yeah. would you
Hi.
like- Hi. Hello, Corey.
So yeah, my question is how would somebody get started? I'm a pianist in the Seattle area on the east side, and I have done house concerts and had various musicians come in, but I've never tried to organize a play-in. And I have mostly choral connections, so I know a lot of singers, but not a lot of instruments. So what would you advise? As I'm happy to organize things. I have a home big enough for 25, 30 people for a concert. You know, what would you advise as far as getting started?
well, I'm in the Seattle area. I know a lot of the amateur musicians in the Seattle area. So I have various lists and I'm happy to share with you and help you.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you put in the chat how I can contact you, I will reach out.
Okay.
It looks like Michael has he's also accidentally applauding, but I think he has his hand raised. Well, Michael, would you like to walk Corey through your steps?
Yeah, I just wrote into the blog that we could send her or put into the ACMP blog my PowerPoint presentation where step by step is mentioned, is written down how I organize these play-ins.
Well, if you'd like to share it and just sort of walk us
Just
through.
now? Okay.
And actually, after he does that, I would love to also talk about this topic of how to engage singers, because we haven't even mentioned singers.
So this was the agenda from Stephanie. Finding a venue, we talked about it, didn't we? We can skip this.
And by the way, Corey, that venue could just be your home. You could, if you have enough rooms.
Finding musicians, well, that's here in Berlin quite easy about over this this list I have. Well, that's different in every area. This is a beginning of an invitation email I sent in German, so that those who are interested mail to me. This was the
Yes, the sight reading.
Prima Vista story. This is a little sentence I wrote for the wind players. For it becomes difficult if there are only 2 or 3 wind players to combine them with the strings. It is possible, but you have to find the right pieces and so on. What is next? Well, I show you this from the answers I get, the emails. I make a list. This is the beginning of a list I have made several times, and now I do not have to write all the names. Oh, my English! Every time anew, but I put in a 1 for those who are now interested in, and a 0 for those who did write me, no, I have no time this time, sorry. And there is no sign for at those who did not answer. with the filter function, I can afterwards I can can find all the ones, and then I have the list of those who will participate this time. Besides this first list, I make another list where I have all the instruments, and every email I get with the information I play the oboe makes me to put in one here for the oboe, and the other one here is the oboe the bassoon player could play. If we would need two oboes, he could bring his oboe. So I know afterwards there's one oboe player with his first instrument and another one who has the oboe as a second instrument. Oda is oboe d'amore. So I can see afterwards there are 15 players with 3 with viola, 4 with violin, and so on.
Oh, yes, that's important. You ask us for
Yes,
money.
of
Organize.
course. Then finding repertoire. Well, we do it this way that I ask the people, the instrumentalists to suggest what they want to play, and to send me the exact instrumentation, what is needed. Often they write, I want to play the Borodin Quintet. And then I can think Borodin Quintet is that with 2 cellos or with 2 violas. So please write the exact instrumentation. Important, do you have all the sheet music? Can you bring it with you? And please bring it with you. Next one is my card game. Well, I told this, which pieces are strongly desired. Are there rare or special instruments? That means that if there's not a whole wind quintet, but maybe a flute and a horn and a clarinet, I try to find those pieces where horn is engaged, and then we have to see, to look which other instruments are needed. So I first think about these pieces, and the other ones like string quartet or quintet are afterwards easier to put together. Bass instruments and pianos are other special points. From big to small means I first try to arrange all those bigger ensembles, octet, septet, and the trios and duos are the left ones. Try to consider individual playing level. That's quite important, but therefore you have to know your players. And new ones, well, that's it's a risiko.
Risk.
It's
Yes.
a risk, yeah. Okay, this you did see. Allocation of rooms, if there are pianos, sufficient room size. Well, a wind quintet needs more size than a string quartet, not only for its one person more, but the loudness is another one. This was an example from last Saturday. The 3 sessions with the pieces. Farkas was a wish from the hornists. Quintet, there were several quintets. Gernsheim was a wish, a desire from the violist who did prepare it and wanted to play the second violin. So the others were to find. Beethoven quartet. The cellist wanted to play them. They didn't. They took something else, and so on. So, yeah, keeping everyone engaged was one of the points Stephanie wrote down. I try to organize it that way that really everyone can play who wants to play. Well, who takes photos for the ACMP? We forgot it several times. Who prepares the breaks? I find breaks are essential, and a break should be long enough, at least half an hour, to come together, to talk to each other, to have some drink, to have something to eat, and then we mix up new and have other ensembles afterwards. I post who is who. That looks like this, so that everyone could have a look. The bassoon player, he's Daniel. Okay, I didn't remember the name and so on. Breaks 30 minutes, I said already. And promotional block, that is this at the end.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
That's it.
Yes, so that's a very organized, step-by-step way to look at it. And so, yeah, so actually, in terms of singers, though, this is an interesting thing because we were talking about, Ginny was talking about people being able to sight read. And so there's singers, of course, that sight read very well, but that becomes more difficult as a vocalist. I don't know if any of our panelists or Anne-Marie has her hand up.
Yeah, we had singers, but those the singers had their prepared pieces they brought with them. Handel arias, for example, Neun Deutsche Arien was great music, great fun, but the singer knew them.
I recommend Mozart, the unspeakable canons by Mozart, if you if you get singers. Good. So Anne-Marie, do you have a question?
I do have a question. You mentioned playing en masse, Stephanie, and most of my play-ins that I've organized, and I've worked together with Sue Klein, who's also here, they've been inclusive either of all string players or of all instruments, en masse altogether. And so I'm wondering if anyone has suggestions for repertoire that's flexible, that has parts for all the instruments, or can be arranged that way.
Does anyone want to weigh in?
Yeah, I could weigh in on that. And then I have another issue. But I used to be a public school music teacher. And I also used to do a lot of chamber gigging. Some of you may know about this series called like Music for 3, Music for 4, that's designed for weddings and so forth. There's a lot of good in there that is flexible instrumentation. And of course, in Baroque times, a lot of times the instrumentation was flexible anyway. So there's a really, in the Baroque era, it was really within certain limits, and depending, there was a lot of variability in possible instrumentation. Also, well, it's kind of a bridge to my next thing. Once again, I'll mention Telemann, because he had so much good stuff that was for this or that. Flutes or violins, bassoon, cello, viola da gamba. There's a lot of substitutions possible that are perfectly legit. And then in regards to singers, because I also sing, once again, a lot of Telemann. You got your Brahms stuff with viola. There is some lovely stuff for in public domain for voice and strings especially. So there is stuff out there, and there's a lot of singers who would love to do that kind of thing. So just wanted to put that out there.
In terms of singers, actually going to spotlight Corey again here. Corey, have you ever tried, because I remember when I was in college, music school, we sometimes had madrigal parties. Have you ever done something like that? Is that the singer equivalent of a play-in?
Probably. I love the idea. You know, I've always done more formal, formal-ish house concerts. So I love the idea of just getting together and singing or playing with no pressure, just finding some new music.
Yeah, well, Brian's suggestion of looking at Baroque music is really good. I also think, I actually think the Renaissance era has, and most of that's on IMSLP, easily accessible Renaissance pieces. I've even programmed Renaissance pieces for my own string quartet. We just play vocal pieces with as a string consort, and they work really well. But those are things that you can bring out at a play-in if you have odd instrumentation, and let people, have singers, because there's words, have a bassoon play the cantus firmus. There's a lot of areas, like people talked about looking into contemporary music. There's also looking much further in the past. You can get a lot of much more flexible instrumentation. I see Bob and Ginny both have their hands up. Do we have commentary from either of you?
In terms of singers, we had a single singer, and that was very popular. We did a lot of Handel and Bach, and once again, if there were multiple parts, you only had one singer, you put an instrument in there, and people generally loved it because very few people get a chance in chamber music to sing with singers. So it was very popular. In terms of large pieces, your nonettes have an ability to cram in a lot of different types of instruments. So I think that brings up the question of what's in your library. So the bigger your library, the bigger your access to library, the better. And we are, and I don't know where we are time-wise, Stephanie, but we are blessed with having a chamber music library on site, which people have contributed to over the years. They're downsizing their house, so they say, hey, would you like, I have a whole thing of Mozart quartets. So over the years, we've built up a great library that has all the, all that you could almost dream of. I supplement that with stuff from my local library, as well as my own personal library. So the wider the number of pieces you have, the more likely it is, I think, that you can fill in the spots when of the various unusual combinations you might have.
Bob?
Yeah, I just add, early on, it just struck me for the first time in Lord knows how long, that we started up on Meetup basically as a facilitator of miniature play-ins, people doing, 4, 5, 6, 7 people at home. We did have some singing madrigals, even I participated in it, but we've had very little demand for voice. But back to Corey's 0 to 60 question, I mean, certainly go to Phyllis. She's your local resource for musicians. But Elina, do Meetup. I have never found better flypaper for musicians than Meetup. Meetup itself is terrible, but as a way to aggregate a community of interest in a place you don't have any other organizations structured for that, use it. It's great. You'll get people signing up pretty quickly. It may take a while before it grows to a substantial size, but you'd be surprised how quickly people will sign up.
Excellent. Ginny, is your hand still raised, or is it? Oh no, it's just. There were some questions in the chat that I saw people writing back and forth about, which I thought would be interesting to bring up. We have about 20 minutes left. Michael brought up having ample breaks for social time and stuff, and there was some discussion as to how long each session should be before you have a break. And Michael says 90 minutes. Someone else said an hour. Does anyone here want to weigh in on that? The way you organize the time in each, if you are going to organize people in rooms.
I was the one who replied at an hour, but I meant a minimum of an hour, and more particularly if you, I think people need breaks, particularly if you have winds. They can't toot around for 3 hours straight. Or if you have if you have to get from one place to another and you're a cellist or a bass fiddle, you need some significant time. So I think that makes a difference. An hour and a half is neat if you can have that, but that makes fewer sessions.
Mhm. Yeah, that's
I've
good.
confronted the same thing Jenny has. I split the difference and did 3 sessions at an hour and 10 each with 10-minute turnarounds. But we looked at it an hour and a half. Everybody hated less than an hour. It was like they could just barely get warmed up in less than an hour.
Excellent. So the topic, the one remaining topic that we haven't discussed much, which would be a good one to end with because it's festive, is how to make your play-in have a fun, festive party environment. So what are the elements that you experienced play-in organizers here in our panel would like to share for how to create that ethos? Susan, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I think you have to force people to to be social, because if you don't have something scheduled as part of the plan where people are encouraged to talk to each other, play for each other, drink with each other, if you don't have it, then people will not necessarily do it. They'll just play and then they'll just go off and that'll be it. So I think it's very good. It's good to have refreshments. It's good to have wine. I don't drink and play at the same time, but it's really nice after all the playing's done to have some time before everyone disappears to talk about it. I think it's really nice if there is time, if people want to play for each other at the end, that can be a fun thing. So I think, building something into it so that there's actually a moment when people talk to each other, can be very helpful.
Yes, it looks like Peter wants to weigh in. I see he's now in the passenger seat of a car.
Sorry about that. So one thing I think that worked well in one of the plans was to have the location of first of all, have built-in breaks for people to both rest and also mingle, especially, and have the place where everyone congregates to either form their next group or go to their next group or meet up with the people that are in the next group, have that centrally located right at the refreshments. Refreshments, especially coffee, for those that need a little more attention, and wine for those that need to chill, and munchies. Coffee, wine, and lots of munchies, and people will typically socialize a lot and have fun.
And by the way, that's an eligible expense for an ACMP play-in grant as well. So just so you know. I see that first Vivian Waters, my violinist friend from Canada, has a question. Hello, Vivian.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Actually, I'm from Santa Fe right now, so.
Yeah, nice.
So I'm back in the States. One of the things that we always like to do is to get people playing right away. The Eugene Lehner, I don't know if you're familiar with this manner of warming up a quartet, but it can be used for anyone, is to have everyone play like a C major scale together, just to figure out what the room is like. And then one person takes 2 notes, and then the next person joins in, and then finally a scale going up, trying to stay within rhythm and coming down the same way. And then you get a chance to feel what the room is like and to feel your sound matching everybody else. And it's a very friendly way to start.
Oh, that's a really lovely idea. Thank you, Vivian. It's wonderful. Ginny, it looks like you have a comment on the party.
Yeah.
Party
Well, I think I think it's to diminish anxiety, because I don't think people can party if they're anxious about performance. So from the very start, I called this a low anxiety play-in. No performance allowed. We in our venue happened to have a playroom. And I announced, my very first sentence is announcing that anyone who is found with any anxiety will be sent down to the playroom to go up and down the slide 10 times to work it out, so that they know that this is about fun. It's not performance. Usually tell a joke about mistakes to make them feel that, you know, it's not about performance. It's about having fun together. So I think that sets you up. And then when you have a food table, you know, people commune around food. So I really think that's essential, even though it's a mess to clean up. You know?
Do any of you have a different perspective on how to manage the food? Like, do you cater it yourself? Do you get participants to bring stuff? You know, like we've talked about musical potlucks where people bring the parts and the scores. How do my panelists handle things like food and drink at a play-in? Anyone have any special nuggets of wisdom for that?
With considerable anxiety on my part and with a little bit of extra stress, I do ask people to bring things, but I'm such a compulsive planner that everything has to be complete. So I usually bring a core of beverages and a core of ice and a core of snacks to make sure that nothing's missing. But it's worth it. I don't do it at every play-in, but I do it maybe twice a year out of our 4. It's worth it. People do hang together. I don't usually lead off with it, but again, you know, people familiar with each other will hang together, but it still gets some good mixing.
I'm seeing a nice comment here from Brian Lee about using Sign Up Genius for the food. Do you want to say something about that, Brian?
Sure. In Sign Up Genius, it's really easy to have like, if you know you're going to have 30 people there, to have like, you know, 3 beverage, have a category of 3 beverage. And once it's filled up, no one else can sign up for that. So then they'll have to go down to, you know, chips or salsa or veggies or whatever. It's a really good way to downplay the 50 dessert syndrome.
Excellent. Actually, I've observed something. Oh, Michael, you have something to say about this. Hello, Michael.
Yeah, I asked everyone to bring some finger food, and we get a good mixed table with finger food, sweets and salty ones. It was quite easy.
Good. Yeah, I think it's true what Ginny said too about the importance of that to create this sort of social, friendly fun, because after all, it really should feel like a party, because I think the main purpose, at least from the ACMP perspective, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, but is that people go to a big play-in and they meet new friends, and they'll, so I think one of the big takeaways that I would take from all the things that people have said about the various topics today is the most important thing is how you mix the people together. You know, whether you do, you know, what Phyllis does with like sign up per room, or the what Bob and Ginny do, which is they specifically create different groups to make sure that different people are playing in different contexts, or do more with the Georgia Chamber Music Retreat, or Bennington does with the, you know, sort of more free form, or what Peter did at his play-in. That's a very important thing. And then the social time is an important time as well, that people can actually talk and get to know each other, exchange contact info. We hope that people after a play-in will actually get back in touch with each other and play chamber music on their own, you know, because they've met someone new, and it's really fun. If you, like Michael, are very careful about including bassoons and oboes and horns and things too, because it's a great, a lot of us are stuck in a rut. We always play with the same people, and we may not know about all these other people in our areas. And the food and the drink is a great way to like let people do that. I've noticed every time that I've catered a play-in that I overdo it, because amateur musicians want to play all the time, so which is great. My background is I'm a professional musician, as well as being the executive director of ACMP. And if you're having professionals at your play-in, you need 5 times as much food and wine. Because we like to hang out at the food and the wine. I'm sure you all know this. You go to a concert, you want to find the artist, they're at the food table. But the couple times I've done one of these play-ins involving amateurs, I always have way too much, because people want to play as much as possible. So that's for the last couple minutes, I just want to talk about keeping people engaged. Because for me, that's the hardest part. Everyone comes, everyone shows up at the same time, everyone wants to play immediately. How do you make sure, like if you're the organizer, how do you make sure people are always engaged? And I know what Peter did. I think he's already gone. I don't know if he's still there in his car, but he chose himself not to play, and he was standing there in the middle of this school, just making sure everyone was hooked up. Does anyone here have any advice for how to make sure, while your event's going on, that everyone is always actively engaged and satisfied and happy? Bob, looks like you have a...
Well, I was going to go a different direction with the prior subject, but I'd have to concur with Peter. If you're going to be managing an event of 30 or 35 musicians or 40 musicians, in addition to the advanced planning, just to make sure people have pieces to play, you need to have at least one person who's just running the show. They can't play music and run the show. Believe me, there are pieces I've had under my fingers ready to play that I've wanted to play at a play-in, and it's like, nope, can't go there. I gotta watch the show. I gotta mind the shop. I did want to just add just real quickly. I may not be the best social planner or party organizer, but I think the highest compliment that I've ever received for a play-in was from a young woman in her 20s at our last meetup. She thanked me and said my organization did a great service. The play-in served a great purpose and service, because without them, I wouldn't have made any friends in Washington yet.
Excellent.
So it had become a very effective means for the younger musicians that just coming into town. There are a lot, but DC is a very transient town. So lots of younger musicians come in and they meet each other through these play-ins, and I'm sure it's the case for all areas.
Thank you. I see that Vivian has a comment or question. Hello, Vivian. Oh, you don't. You just had your hand up. Okay. Oh, okay. Michael, did you have a comment?
It was only applause for what Bob said.
Oh, applause, yes. Oh, Henri, who is the chair of the International Ambassadors Council, joining us from the Netherlands, has a comment or a question. Hello, Henri.
Hi to everybody. Sorry I came late. Has anybody experience with trying to make new groups sign up at the end of the play-in for next time?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Any of you experienced play-in organizers have any feedback on that?
No, for I always say, well, you can tell me your wishes with whom you want to play, but let me put the ensembles together so that it fits. And so I'm not very interested in a fixed group which comes and says, we want to play Dvorak Quintet, we 5.
I think, Henri, you were asking, sorry, Ginny, do you have a comment on that?
The previous comment about does the chief honcho or honcha participate? I would strongly urge not in the first session, maybe not even the second, but if you have 3 sessions, by the time the third session is
Yeah.
rolling around, most people are there. And so I try to schedule myself, but sometimes I just have to play the sub for someone who didn't show up. And then if things might fall apart, so what?
Well,
It's
and
for fun.
I am the first victim. I make myself the first victim of our limited number of pianists. I like to keep our other folks busy, but that's a good point.
Yeah. And if you do a big piece at the end, of course, or at the beginning. So Michael, do you play in the big piece at the beginning? You play in your own play-in, right, Michael? You do. Yeah. So but you have it all set. So you have all the groups set in advance.
I try to. No, not in advance, in the beginning of the block of the session. And then the next session is made new.
Okay, good. Yeah. One thing that I'm remembering now, one thing that Susan and I did for that big Jam Kazam Mozart thing. So we did the approach, you know, we know I think that's one of the big topics today, was whether you find the musicians first or the music first, and there's pros and cons to both. We found a composer first, then had musicians sign up, and then chose pieces based on who was signed up. So it was kind of a hybrid. And of course, if you did it with Telemann, you'd have no trouble at all. But we did find when we did that we had some holes. And so we actually recruited players at a certain point, which is another thing you can do. I know, Bob, you're talking about all the people you have to turn away. But there's also, Bob, do you ever reach out and like send a mass email saying we don't have enough violins?
Absolutely. I have to periodically, if I come up with gaps. Oddly enough, viola has been the one that's been difficult for us to fill until recently. Oboes always seem to be, I have a hard time getting oboes. So yeah, but I have this mailing list of hundreds of musicians, and I just say, we need people. We need these particular instruments to make certain ensembles and pieces work. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think basically everyone understands that a play-in is a party. And so, you know, if you're a bassoonist and you end up playing cello parts, that's part of the fun, right? Like I know, you know, Ginny, you said you had your bassoonist that likes to play cello parts. So I hope, you know, in the way you communicate to the people that you invite, that they know that it's a fun, festive thing and it's a social thing. And making music is central to that, but also making friends and meeting new people and creating a new chamber music community around yourself is as important as the music. So if you end up playing, you know, tuba parts on the viola, you don't record it, you don't broadcast it on YouTube. It's a low pressure. Bob, if you'd like to repeat your 3 C's, I think this would be a good time to do it.
I'm not muted. Okay, congenial, collegial, and non-competitive. It's much the same. Jenny has a similar approach, different words, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. Collegial, congenial, and non-competitive.
Well, thank you. I feel like this has been such a lovely session, and I want to extend a warm thank you to all of our panelists. Michael staying up late at night in Berlin. I guess it's already 10 o'clock there. Okay, and you know our Ginny and Phyllis all the way from the west coast, and our 2 participants in DC, Susan and Bob, and Peter in his car on his way from Westchester to I don't know where. Thank you so much for participating in this and sharing your experience, and thank you to all of you who came to this and had such great insights and questions. We will be making a video of this and posting it online. And I hope that this discussion will generate further communication and articles. If anyone wants to write me and has something they'd like me to put on the blog, experience, a report about your own play-in, or you know, any helpful tips on how to organize these kind of events moving forward. I think it's very important that we share this with our community so that we all meet and play for pleasure, which is what ACMP is all about. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.